Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Rosemary Koo, United Ag's Chief Medical Officer, and we are so excited to have you join us today for our health chats. We have a special guest here today, Lulu Tovar, and we're going to be talking about gut health. Gut health is definitely a very new and emerging field in science right now, which also means that there's a lot of confusion around what gut health means and how to obtain optimal gut health. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes today. I have several questions for Lulu, and then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience. If you have any questions while we're talking, go ahead and put it in the chat feature or in the Q&A feature, and we'll get to them at the end. Alrighty, so Lulu here is a board certified holistic health practitioner. She's an expert in functional medicine and holistic medicine. So what that means is that she doesn't just treat people for acute illnesses, but really looks at their whole lifestyle and helps them, attain true health in all areas of their life. So I'm super excited to have her here today. So Lulu, I'm sure gut health is, a major component of what you work with people on. Can you help explain why gut health is so important for physical and mental health?
Yes, thank you, Rosemary. Gut health is very important. If our gut is not well, our brain will not be well, our mood will not be well, our health will not be well. There is no cell in our body that can function properly if it's not receiving the nutrients that it needs. And so, if we are not giving our body those nutrients, it's not just the foods that we are eating. We're not just what we eat, it's also we are also what we can absorb and digest. So if we're having a hard time digesting or absorbing any of those nutrients, it's going to lead us to chronic illnesses and mood or mental imbalances. Our brain and our guts are connected. There's a nerve that connects both of them. So when one is affected, the other is affected. The nerves in our gut are the ones that help regulate our hormones. They help regulate our muscles. They help with our immune cells. So 80% of our immune system is created in our gut. So if we want to stay healthy, we want to make sure that we have our gut healthy because 80% of our immune system is created in our guts. Also, our neurotransmitters, the chemicals that help with our mood, serotonin, which is that feel good chemical that helps us feel good. It's 90% of it is actually created in our gut. It's not created in our brain. So it affects our mood if our gut is impacted. Also, our B vitamins. The B vitamins are what helps us deal with stress and what gives us energy. That's created in our gut. So if we have an imbalanced gut, our mood is going to be affected, our health is going to be affected. So it's been said that most of the illnesses are created in our gut. And so there's actually a new study that came out in 2020 where conventional medicine is also now realizing how important gut health is as well.
That's fantastic because I think a lot of people have struggled with mental health issues. And, a lot of the medicines that we have for mental health might not address the core issues, especially if they are related to gut health. Um, the whole adage of, listen to your gut is just so true. Like our gut is really a pathway to our mental health and physical health. So thank you so much for explaining all of that. There's a term that's kind of in the gut health world that's used a lot, and I was hoping you could shed some light on it. Is what does leaky gut actually mean, and what does that cause? Do people have it but they just don't know about it?
Yes, I believe that a lot more people have it a lot more people have it than we realize. Leaky gut. So our intestines have a wall, a barrier, and there is a small gap in our intestines, which allows for the nutrients to go into our bloodstream. What happens is that after so much chronic inflammation, that gap can open up bigger than it should be. And when that gap is opened up, it starts releasing things that shouldn't be going into our bloodstream, things like toxins and bacteria and food particles. They start going into our bloodstream, and that's why it's called leaky gut, because it's leaking into our bloodstream things that shouldn't be going there. And things that cause a leaky gut are something like uh, medications, antibiotics, even a one-time use of antibiotics can contribute to leaky gut, birth control pills, smoking, stress, tap water. If you're drinking tap water and not filtered water because there's chlorine in the tap water and that affects the gut. Also, eating foods that are processed, sugar, but even some healthy foods. If you have a food sensitivity to a food sensitivity is something different from an allergy. An allergy is something where you want to go to the emergency room, but a food sensitivity is not something that is life threatening. It's you have an intolerance to a certain food, and it could be a healthy food, and it creates an immune reaction. It creates an inflammation in the gut. In my practice, that's one of the things that with my clients, we test for food sensitivities. There's about 98 foods that we test for to make sure that they are not consuming, even if it's a healthy food, a food that is creating a reaction in their body. The most common ones would be something like gluten, dairy, corn, eggs. Those are the most common foods that create a sensitivity in the body. So that can create a leaky gut if you're consuming a food that is creating a sensitivity and creating that inflammation and that immune reaction. Also, too much alcohol, consuming too much alcohol can also create a leaky gut. And so when we're experiencing that leaky gut and these food particles are going into our bloodstream, or this bacteria or these toxins, most of us, when we think about gut issues or digestive issues, we think about the most common ones, which is bloating, diarrhea, constipation, stomach discomfort. But when we're having a leaky gut or any digestive or gut imbalances, it could actually lead to low mood. It could lead to depression, anxiety, body aches, arthritis, autoimmune illnesses, um, headaches, allergies, skin rashes. All of those are contributed from possibly having a leaky gut. So it's not just the most obvious, which is stomach discomforts, but things that we sometimes don't connect to our gut would be some of those things that I just mentioned.
Mm. Wow, that's fascinating that, a lot of these conditions are so common. Probably most of us have at least one of those conditions
Mhm.
potentially. And then the foods that you mentioned, I mean, it's 11 o'clock already here on the West Coast. So we might have eaten like several of those foods that you mentioned already. So
Okay.
they're so common. And so, a lot of people now, okay, well, okay, and I'll take a step back here. Now that you have sensitized us enough to worry about gut health, and our minds are opened
Mhm.
to how important this is. What do we need to do from a lifestyle standpoint to have good gut health?
Um, Well, I would highly recommend checking your gut. In my practice, I offer an at-home lab test that you can take. It's a first morning urine that checks the gut health. So you want to make sure that you don't have an overgrowth of bacteria. You make sure you don't have H. pylori, Candida, which is a fungus, or an overgrowth of bacteria. So one of the things that is always recommended is probiotics. But I don't start with probiotics with my clients because if there is already an overgrowth of bacteria in the gut, which some of you might have heard of the term SIBO, that stands for small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. Um, if you already have an overgrowth of bacteria, probiotics are the good bacteria. Even though it's a good bacteria, it's still bacteria. So if you're taking probiotics and you already have an overgrowth, now you're creating a bigger overgrowth. You're exacerbating the problem. You're making it bigger. So you want to check to make sure that you don't have an overgrowth of bacteria before you start taking probiotics. What we do in my practice is we remove that overgrowth first. before we introduce the probiotics, because we don't want to create that overgrowth bigger. So even fermented foods is a big thing that is recommended. It's another thing that may create an overgrowth. So you want to make sure that you're not making the problem bigger by consuming that. First, you want to check your digestive health, make sure you're not having H. pylori, overgrowth, candida, parasites. You can also have parasites. So you want to check that. You can have your doctor check for a stool test to see if there's H. pylori or parasites. So that's one of the things I would recommend first.
That's great. And which lifestyle factors are the most important for us to focus on?
Stress is a big thing. Stress is big for leaky gut and for gut health because stress also slows down our digestive system. So we want to make sure that we are doing a lot of stress management. We want to make sure that we're reducing a lot of the processed foods, sugars, pastries, bread, because that feeds the bad bacteria and creates the overgrowth as well. Um, Exercise also, but not over exercising, because over exercising can also lead to leaky gut. So just pretty much following a clean diet, stress management, making sure you're not eating too many processed foods and over exercising. I would start there.
That sounds great. Now, as we head into the holidays, a lot of us might be concerned about bloating. That's often a very common digestive symptom. Do you have any specific tips to address bloating specifically?
Yes, so bloating is probably a good indication that you have an imbalance in your digestive system. So you really want to check to see what the root cause is. But in the meantime, so that you can give yourself some relief until you address the root cause, make sure that when you're consuming your foods that you're in a relaxed state, because like I indicated, the stress will shut down the digestive system. So you want to make sure you're not standing while you're eating, make sure you're sitting down and you're really it, you're on, focusing on your food and not on the phone or watching TV. You want to be mindful of what you're eating. If you're feeling a little stress, you want to take a few deep breaths before you start eating. Prayer or a few deep breaths to put your body in the relax and digest mode. Um, you also want to make sure that you're not drinking any liquids with your meals. That's a big thing in our culture, is that we have our big a glass of beverage that we're drinking with our meals, but that really dilutes the digestive fluids in our digestive system. And so if you really need to drink something, make sure it's small sips. Make sure that it's not ice cold. We want it to be warm or room temperature because the cold also affects our digestion. If you order something at a restaurant, I usually always say no ice, because first, I don't want it to be ice cold because it's going to affect the digestive system. But secondly, most of the ice that they make at restaurants are made with tap water. And so it's going to have some of that chlorine that may affect the gut as well. So if you really need to drink something, small sips or something warm like a ginger tea really helps with the digestion. Or you can have a little bit of apple cider vinegar and a little bit of water before you have your meal. That will help with the stomach acid, so that we can start breaking down that food and digest it well. You can try going for a walk after your meal. 30 minutes after your meal, that really helps with the digestion of that meal. And I start my day with warm lemon water every morning before I have any breakfast or anything else. That really helps also. It turns on the digestive system. It helps detoxify the liver, and it has so many health benefits. So that's something that would be beneficial as well.
Wonderful, Lulu. Thank you so much for sharing all of this information. I know that I'm very guilty of drinking cold fluids, and my mother has always told me to avoid that. And now hearing it from you, now I know why.
Yes.
So that's definitely one change that I'm going to make. I'm sure others have heard a lot of information from you today that are, kind of light bulbs for
Mm.
things that they can do differently in their lives. Before we head to the Q&A, can you just go through all the links with us that you put into chat? Lulu ahead of time put in all these wonderful links to resources. So go ahead and explain what we have here in the chat function.
Yes, the first link is a link to a green juice guide. It's a guide with video tutorials that will help you get started on drinking green juice, green vegetables, because vegetables are really key for our gut health. They really have the fiber, they have the nutrients that we need for a healthy gut. The second link is for intermittent fasting. It's a guide that gives you information on how to do intermittent fasting, what length of time is the healthiest length for everyone. Intermittent fasting is something that would also help you with your gut health. Giving your digestive system a break for a period of time during the day is really beneficial for your digestive system. So that guide will guide you through that. The next link is a link if you would like to schedule a free session with me. So that we can go over what your symptoms are and how my program works and how my services work to see if there's something that we can, that if my services are something that we can work together to address your goals and your symptoms. I do speak Spanish, so I can provide those services in Spanish. And then the next links are my links to my website and my social media.
Great. Thank you so much. And then also thanks to Rebecca for prompting us to put it back into chat in case anyone came a little bit later on. Excellent. So we do have a question here. The question is, how do you minimize that overgrowth that you talked about earlier, the bacterial overgrowth?
So if you already have it, we want to make sure that I have a program, it's a 12-week program protocol that we do. We want to remove the overgrowth first and then repopulate the gut with the right balance of the good and the bad bacteria. We want to have both the good and the bad bacteria. It's not that we only want the good bacteria. Both are necessary, but they have to be at a healthy ratio. We want to have 85% good bacteria and probably 15% of the bad bacteria. And so to minimize the growth is like I indicated, reducing the processed foods because that feeds that bacteria, reducing the sugar, making sure that you are digesting your food well. You can also incorporate digestive enzymes before your meals so that you can make sure that you're breaking down that food. We just need to find out if you have a growth of candida, which is a fungus, or do you have a growth of bacteria? So they're two different things, a yeast or a bacteria. So they're dealt with in a different way. So it would be beneficial if you find out what is going on in your gut, which one is creating the problem. But I would not take a probiotic. If you feel bloated after taking a probiotic, that's a good indication that you probably already have an overgrowth. So don't feed it more by taking a probiotic. If you feel bloated after having a meal, you may have an overgrowth. So you want to do a protocol that actually removes and repopulates it. Like I indicated, the warm water, not drinking too many liquids with your food. Stress also is very helpful, reducing your stress. So yeah, but we want to find out what's going on. Do you have which one do you have, or is there H. pylori? So there's a difference. Our stomach is at the top. I don't know if you'll be able to see. I have my little friend here. But I don't know if you can see this, but our stomach is at the top, and then our small intestine, and then our large intestine. So a lot of my clients will touch the top part and say, or they'll touch where the belly button is, and they'll say, my stomach hurts, or I'm having problems in my stomach. Where the belly button is, that's not your stomach. That's your small intestine. So if that part is getting bloated, that's the small intestine. So there may be an overgrowth going on there. So the stomach is at the top part. So just want to kind of give that a little bit of clarification.
That's great. I love the anatomy lesson there. All right, we have another question here. Do you have any general tips for someone who has IBS?
Um, IBS, I would really try to do the protocol that I indicated. You want to make sure that you're digesting and you have enough stomach acid as well. Um, Make sure that your stress management, the apple cider vinegar could be very helpful until you get to the root cause and rebalance. So apple cider vinegar either early in the morning or the lemon water, warm lemon water early in the morning before you have breakfast or anything else. And you can have a little bit of apple cider vinegar in water before each meal. Also, some digestive enzymes would be very beneficial and until you get to really rebalancing what's creating the IBS.
Great. Excellent questions from the audience. Any more questions?
Another thing that I didn't mention, and so even the IBS helped me remember that, is if you're eating vegetables, make sure that they're organic. Because if they're not organic, they can have pesticides that can contribute to it. I had clients who cannot eat a lettuce or anything without having loose stool because it's probably because of the pesticides. So just make sure that it's organic as well. If you're having a hard time digesting vegetables, the leafy greens are the hardest to digest. So I would start with steamed vegetables, something like broccoli, uh, cauliflower. Make sure that they're cooked and they're steamed. Those are easier to digest than raw vegetables.
Great. Actually, really quickly on that, I have a question. You see a lot of folks doing completely raw food diets. Um, is that beneficial at all, or is it better to have a mixture of cooked and raw, or mostly cooked? What is your stance on that?
Raw food diets are really beneficial as well, but I personally would not do all raw. They do have some enzymes that the vegetables don't have, but it just depends on the vegetable. I always recommend having both raw and cooked. For example, broccoli. I do not recommend eating broccoli raw. It's very hard to digest, and cooking it or steaming it actually changes the chemistry in the broccoli and releases more of the beneficial nutrients. So you're losing some of those beneficial nutrients if you eat broccoli raw. So that one is much better when it's steamed or cooked. And if you are having trouble breaking down, like I indicated, any of the vegetables, I would start with steamed or cooked vegetables and not raw vegetables. You want to make sure until you get your digestive system working, then you can start going to the raw. That's one of the reasons why I really like the green juice because it the blending it already breaks down. That's most of the digesting for us. So you're able to get a lot of the leafy vegetables, but it's already been broken down by the blender. And so you have less of those symptoms. You want to make sure that you have enough stomach acid if you're having a hard time, because what the stomach acid is what breaks down the food before it goes to our intestines. If it's not breaking it down and it's just sending it to the intestines pretty much in its full form, that's what creates a lot of the problems because those foods could end up putrefying or in our intestines. So we want to make sure it's broken down. So that's we tend to want to take antacids to remove the acid from our stomach, but that's one of the places that we do need to have acid because we need it to break down our food. We don't want an overgrowth of acid. We don't want too much acid either, but we do want to have acid there so that it can break down our food.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, another question here. How do you get your gut health tested? For example, if I'd like to bring this up with my doctor, how should I ask this question? Currently, I don't think I have any digestive issues, but I'm now curious about getting my gut health tested. But I'm wondering how to best bring it up.
I am not sure if Western conventional medicine doctors offer this test. They do, I believe they do offer the stool test. So if you can ask them for a stool test, they can check your stool to see if there's any parasites or bacteria or H. pylori. But through my practice, it's functional medicine labs. So I offer a functional medicine at a home lab. It gets mailed to you. It asks for your first morning urine sample. You mail it back to the lab. And it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get the results. Once we get the results, I get the results and I explain to you what it all means, and what we need to do to rebalance whatever the results show. So it'll tell us if there's any overgrowth of bacteria, if there's yeast overgrowth. It'll also give us your vitamin levels, your B vitamin levels, your C vitamin levels, your mitochondria, how it's working, which is what creates the energy in our body, and your neurotransmitters, if you're producing them well or not. So it's a first morning urine test through functional medicine labs.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I don't know of any kind of Western, standard, medicine practices that will do comprehensive lab testing. So it's really more on the functional practitioner side that is more common, or there are kind of consumer products online. But unfortunately, for most doctors, MDs or DOs, if you go to them, as Lulu said, the limit of their testing is really for parasites, or a lot of the bad bacteria.
Mhm.
All right, we have another question in the Q&A function here, feature. I'm not sure if this was already asked. This wasn't actually, but what are some beginning steps one should take to be more aware about gut health? I'm not too aware of my body, but just want to get a head start in understanding if my gut health is healthy.
Yes, if you well, the obvious symptoms are if you have constipation, if you have diarrhea, if you have a meal and you feel exhausted after a meal, that's a good indication that you're probably having a hard time digesting your food or you don't have enough stomach acid. So pay attention to how you feel after your meals. If you have skin rashes after you eat a meal, you might have eaten something that you have a sensitivity to. If your mood changes, if I eat something with gluten, I have a sensitivity to gluten. So if I eat a wheat bread, I will get very irritable within like 20 minutes. I'll get really cranky. So pay attention to your mood. That's kind of an indication. If you wake up in the morning and your stomach is flat, but throughout as the day progresses, it starts getting more bloated. That's an indication that you may have an imbalance in your guts. Um, Body aches, low energy, low mood. Those are indications that you may be having an imbalance in your gut. So going through any of the steps that I said about the bloating and making sure that you're reducing your stress will be beneficial until you get some testing done to see if there's any imbalance going on.
Great. Yeah, it's so interesting. All these symptoms that you mentioned, we might experience them and then attribute it to something else completely.
So
Um,
I have my clients write down a journal on the foods that they're consuming just so that you can do it for just 1 week so you can kind of pay attention to what foods are affecting you, because what happens with the food sensitivity is that you don't feel the symptoms right away. Sometimes it could take up to 3 days for you to feel a symptom. So you're feeling a symptom 3 days later, you don't relate it to something you ate 3 days before. You think it's something that you ate that same day, but it could be something you ate 3 days before. So if you keep a journal to kind of keep tabs on what you ate, and then if you feel something, you can look at, well, what did I eat yesterday and 2 days ago and 3 days ago? And it could be something that you ate that may be creating some of the symptoms.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, this will be our last question this morning. It's a great question. For the lemon water or apple cider vinegar, what is the measure to the water?
It Make sure that it's room temperature or warm, and it could be between 8 to 16 ounces of water. It can be half a lemon or a whole lemon, depending if you're trying to save cost on the lemons. It doesn't matter; it could be half or whole. And you can also add the apple cider vinegar to the lemon water with the lemon included, and it would be about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar.
Great. Well, thank you, Lulu. This was so much good information this morning. The recording will be on the United Ag website as well as prior interviews with Lulu. So if you're curious about more about her background or other topics we've talked about, you can see the recordings there. I hope you all have a happy and healthy holiday season. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you so much, Lulu.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.